Moving on, as the war in West Asia prepares to enter its fourth week, Prime Minister Modi spoke to Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and flagged growing concerns over attacks on critical infrastructure in the region and the importance of safeguarding freedom of navigation. This is the Prime Minister's second conversation with the President since the war broke out on the 28th of February, with the conversation pertaining to two crucial elements: critical infrastructure and the disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. India has been engaged with Iran at the diplomatic level for the safe passage of Indian ships through Hormuz as New Delhi continues to navigate a diplomatic tightrope. We continue to talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show is Sumit Peer, senior political commentator, Major General G.G. Dwivedi, defense and geopolitical expert, Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee, former diplomat, and last but not the least, Mr. Adit Kothari, foreign affairs expert, is also with us on the program. Sumit Peer, I'll begin with you. Well, the Prime Minister has spoken to the Iranian leader in the past as well, but the fact of the matter is that, Iran is only getting bolder. They have been, in fact, trying to exert pressure and presence by deploying intercontinental missiles. Look what they were trying to do with Diego Garcia. The fact of the matter is that for Iran, this is perhaps an existential war, but for Israel and the United States, this is perhaps just a small chapter in the long history of battle-ready nations.
Vineet, thank you very much for having me on your show. You have put on a very good question, sir. Prime Minister Modi talking, it's very important because look, critical infrastructure like Kharg Island, oil and gas and all should not be dismantled, because after this regime is even gone, the people of Iran will pay a price for that. So you should avoid dismantling all the critical infrastructure, because ultimately people will suffer, because this regime is on the last leg. This has to go whichever way. I call them the mullah regime, by the way. That is what they are. So now regarding, you see, we need the tricky point is our only two ships have passed through the strait. Two are likely to pass. I don't know have they passed or not. There are more than 22 which are stranded. I was making this point a couple of days back on your show. It is not what Pezeshkian talks and promises, because nobody controls that strait. It's a very volatile place. Anything can happen. All kinds of people are acting there. All things are happening there. And honestly, if you talk to Pezeshkian today, God gave him long life. I don't know tomorrow this time will he be alive or not. That is where the situation is. That is how exactly the things are falling. It's like a tree in an autumn wind. That is how the regime looks like today. They are just falling off. So the challenge here is that, the things are going in a haywire. They are trying to go with the last man in. They are trying to go all chips in. The regime has been dismantled. 50 years they have been trying to make missiles and all. 22nd days they have nothing much to shoot. Now they are trying to attack Diego Garcia and all. There were two missiles which were sent, but they were intercepted. It's not easy to go through that. It is not easy to sink an American aircraft carrier. It is not easy to get and reach Americans. I have been stretching my neck out and all media possibly and saying from day one that if you look at the combined military strength of America and Israel, these people are no match. Yeah, Allah, for 50 years they only built bunkers and missiles. That's why they're still shooting here and there. But if you look at the quantum of damage, what have been they able to do to the Israeli military, to the American military, the only people they have damaged is the fellow Muslim countries. The only economy they have damaged is the economy of the neighboring countries, and the only countries and the only thing they are trying to devastate is the Middle East as such. Now I'll quote you Mr. Saud, the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia. He said, what is Islamic about what they are doing? Islam says do not attack neighbors. Islam says do not attack Muslim neighbors. You are doing exactly opposite of that. You send Hezbollah, you dismantled Lebanon, you dismantled Iran, you supported Hamas, they dismantled Gaza, you supported Yemen, these Houthis, they destroyed Yemen, you are supporting PMF, they are destroying Iraq. So what is Muslim and what is Islamic about you? Why do you pride in self when you are calling some Islamic revolution and Islamic republic? So you are doing anything which is not Islamic. That is the point. The challenge here is that for Israel, they will make sure they never get a half victory. And for Donald Trump, he wants a full, complete victory. He wants to take the control of Kharg Island. He will ideally want to take control of Strait of Hormuz. He would want to build an American base there. He wants to control their coast, because out of the 8 major ports, 4 are being bombarded, partially destroyed. The 120 ships we need are down the Persian Gulf. 46 mine boats are down the Persian Gulf. 11 submarines are gone. practically no air force, no air defense. That is what is remaining. If I go down the Caspian Sea, Israelis have drawn pretty much everywhere. There are 3 major ports there which they are attacking. So that is the position. Your missile arsenal is left to less than 8%. You might have 100, 150 mobile cantilever launchers all together which are left. Your new missile production facility is gone. You cannot enrich the uranium. And couple of hours back, what the reports in the media, they have taken out your Natanz with B-2 bombers and the bunker busters, which was considered the most hardened site below a granite mountain. That has been also taken. Now, if I look at plus and minus, Mustafa is nowhere to be seen. We only know a ghost who lives, whose name is Mustafa. I remember when I look at Mustafa, I look at the Indrajal comics Phantom. That's the character I used to read, and it used to say the ghost who can walk. I don't know what is Mustafa. Is the ghost who can walk? That is really what he is. Where is he? Where is the supreme leader? I mean, the supreme leader doesn't know he's so supreme and he's so invincible. He has become Mr. India ka India. I don't know, can you see him in the red glasses? I will tell Americans to buy a pair of them. But anyway, that is where the position is. You know, you cannot win wars on Islamic rhetoric. You cannot win wars on saying Inshallah, Mashallah, Alhamdulillah. If you have to win the war, you have to beat Americans, you have to beat Israelis. And what you are doing, you are exactly bringing, slaughtering, dismantling the complete Middle East. You are dismantling the complete their economies. You are dismantling the people's livelihoods. You are attacking their lives and businesses. You are making Middle East unsustainable. And as far as Strait of Hormuz goes, how long can you hold it? It's up to, when they make a plan, they will take it out. Today, yesterday morning, 3 a.m., typically a morning time, or you might say early morning, Trump was saying, oh, I want to wind up the operations, I want to wind up the operations. What he did, exactly after 12 hours of that, he went and dismantled the most highly secured nuclear site. Asfahan is remaining. Mustafa is remaining. 15 member people are on a bounty of $10 million each. And you have Shah's Shah's son, who is ready to, parachute in. That is where it is happening. Count the, military losses to America and Israel. You can count them on their figures. So by this logic, and your missile, what we are firing at Israel and America and everywhere, has come down by 90%. So by which logic, by which bravado, by what on earth, which mathematics are you winning the war? You are not. And for Trump, it's okay, he can play along. And look, Vineet, he has asked for $200 billion, Pentagon has asked Congress. So what is that $200 billion for? That is for continuing the war. The cost of war is $800 million a day. $200 billion means 6 mahine ki ladai. That is what they are budgeting for. And Pete Hegseth said very nicely, it takes money to kill bad people. So that is where the scenario is, that is where the war is headed, Vineet.
Okay.
I don't know what they're talking about.
You're absolutely right, Sumit. I completely concur with you. We have a lot of ground to cover. More than 20 countries have expressed readiness to help ensure safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, condemning Iran's closure of the strategic route. The UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs released a joint statement by the leaders of the UAE, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and a few more countries who have in fact expressed this concern, if we can call it that. The statement stressed on freedom of navigation, adding that the consequences of Iran's actions would be felt across the world as the global energy market continues to feel the shockwaves caused by the disruptions in the world's most strategic choke point. Let me rope in General Dwivedi into this conversation as well. General Dwivedi, will Iran, won't Iran is the big question. There is pressure. The Prime Minister also spoke to the leader, Mr. Pezeshkian, trying to make them understand that energy is a huge concern, even for countries, General Dwivedi, that are not directly part of this conflict. General Dwivedi? Okay.
Actually, yeah.
All right. Let me. Maybe there's a problem with your connection, sir. Let me rope in Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee, who's also joined us, former diplomat. Ambassador Mukherjee, I hope you're there with us, ma'am. Ambassador Mukherjee. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now. But, I missed out the question.
So we are talking about the fact that the Prime Minister has spoken to the Iranian leader, trying to make them understand that there are, a number of countries in this part of the world who really have nothing to do with this war, but are paying the price. Iran obviously is outgunned and outmaneuvered by the Americans and the Israelis on a number of fronts, and perhaps the Strait of Hormuz, as well as its capture and its non-opening could be one of the cards that it is likely to use.
Absolutely, Vineet, because after all, Iran well knew that it cannot match the might and the capability of American and Israelis together. So they have to have certain options. So they played out the cards. One is that they have gone into the isometric fighting mode and they are striking selectively, but mostly commercial target, which will hit the economy of the Gulf states. Secondly, of course, Hormuz was always a trump card. In fact, last June also, when the Americans and the Israelis took the strikes on their nuclear installation, they had said that we'll, block the Strait of Hormuz, and therefore that is the card they have played. And Vineet, not only that, there are some more cards up the sleeve. In fact, they have not blocked the, Red Sea route, and Houthis are just waiting. So the point is that every country has its own, trump cards, has its own strategy, and therefore Iranians have taken on to this strategy of blocking the Hormuz because that is actually impacting not only the countries in the region but the globe per se, and therefore this is hurting the larger global polity, and that's why about 22 countries have said that they are condemned the Iranian attacks on the Gulf countries and also blocking the Strait of Hormuz. And our Prime Minister also have been very actively engaged with the leaders of the Gulf countries, and also he has spoken to the Iranian president that the Strait of Hormuz should not be weaponized and it should be opened because it impacts the larger global polity and not only the countries that are involved in this conflict. So therefore, I think the pressure needs to be brought on the Iranians to open this Strait of Hormuz, or it will have to be an operation for which I think President Trump is already planning, because two amphibious task forces are moving. In fact, the USS Tripoli has already crossed the Malacca Strait, and USS Boxer is heading for the Indian Ocean. So the point is, now that is upon the Iranian leaders. Either they take the message of the larger countries and the impact, or they will have to face possibly the amphibious landing, and this could be a special operation. And being from the special forces, I think this can be one of the tasks which possibly President Trump has the option to execute. But I hope the good sense prevails on the Iranian leadership, and they should open the Strait of Hormuz rather than further escalating the conflict. Vineet.
All right. Well, with Iran mostly closing off the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. military has brought out some of the heaviest bombs in its arsenal to penetrate adjacent missile sites. The U.S. Central Command said that it had dropped multiple 5,000-pound bombs on a hardened underground facility located along Iran's coast that it allegedly used to store anti-ship cruise missiles, mobile missile launchers and other equipment. Most importantly, the U.S. believes that it has thus degraded Iran's ability to threaten freedom of navigation in and around the Strait of Hormuz as the world eyes remain trained upon the key oil route as well. Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee also with us at this point in time. Ambassador Mukherjee, obviously, the war is continuing to escalate. Diego Garcia was attemptedly targeted by Iran. Of course, both of those missiles did not land. One was intercepted and one failed on its own. The theater is moving, from one area to another. It's important to understand that this war no longer is just between these three countries. The entire world, especially the entire world economy, ma'am, is under attack.
Apologies, Vineet, I got stuck under some technical issue. The attack on Diego Garcia, actually, in my perception, was a signal by Iran because of the torpedoing of its ship, which we had invited actually for a naval exercise, which was 22 nautical miles, if I'm not mistaken, of Sri Lankan territorial waters, and that was the first time since World War II that the Americans had actually torpedoed the ship, which also explains perhaps why Sri Lanka has refused the utilization of Sri Lankan air bases, etc., for American aircraft, because it did that this morning or yesterday evening. As far as the Straits of Hormuz are concerned, um, putting American boots on the ground is what Iran wants. That would be the biggest trap that Trump would get himself into. American boots on the ground means American casualties in a nation that is known for martyrdom and is ready to go down fighting. In my perception, what Trump said this morning, which was that he was ready to bring it down to an end, and he put 3 or 4 points why he's achieved what he wanted, one or two of which you also said. This is the time to bring the war to an end, get in a mediator acceptable to both sides, somebody like President Putin, and open up the Straits of Hormuz. There is no question, I agree completely with Major General Dwivedi, that the Straits of Hormuz have to be opened up. And the Iranians have to be clearly told that on this there is no compromise, nor is there any compromise on their targeting, for instance, in this ridiculous manner, Gulf states that have always tried to calm things down, especially the UAE, where Iranians were heavily invested and where UAE actually helped them to escape the crippling effects of earlier American sanctions, also Qatar, etc. So the Straits of Hormuz have to be opened up, but if they are to be opened up through amphibious landing, special forces, boots on the ground, it will have an impact on Trump in the midterm. His popularity rating is already 39%. The ideal solution for everyone concerned, including India, would be to have a mediation to get the Americans to back off, to accept what the Americans have said, that their missile capacity has been degraded to an extent that they are no longer a threat to the Gulf states, etc. They are no longer a threat to international peace and security. And to get the Americans, to get the Israelis to back down to, which they have done, because Trump told Netanyahu that what happened 2 days ago was without his authorization, and the Israelis have backed down. So I think what I would say is that by 3rd or 4th of April, we would see this gradually calming down, because otherwise, if it's not calmed down, there would be boots on the ground, there could be a catastrophic outcome of the boots on the ground, and we surely don't want Iran to go the Iraq way, when the Americans imagined that Saddam had WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, and the manner in which they took down Saddam's system of governance resulted in complete unrest for years to come. And we don't want that surely to happen to Iran. We need to calm things down. It's not good for the Americans. It's not good for the Israelis. It's not good for India. It's not good for the global economy. So therefore, I would say boots on the ground should be avoided. It is what this clerical regime, or what remains of it in Iran, want. They want American boots on the ground.
You're quite right, ma'am. Well, the US and Israel mounted an attack on Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment facility on Saturday, long regarded as Iran's main enrichment site. However, there was no leakage of radioactive materials reported at the Shahid Ahmadi Roshan enrichment facility in Natanz, about 220 kilometers of southeast of Tehran. And with key developments shaping in for the ever-expanding war in West Asia, US President Donald Trump said that he was considering winding down military operations against Iran as the United States temporarily eased sanctions on Iranian oil shipments to stem a global supply crisis. Trump, in a post on Truth Social, said that the United States was getting very close to meeting their objectives as we consider winding down our great military efforts in the Middle East. In the same statement, Trump put the onus of the protection of the Strait of Hormuz on nations that use the sea route asserting that the US itself does not, he stated, that the US would help nations if asked, but that won't be necessary once the Iran threat is totally eradicated. Adit, coming to you now. The Iran threat being eradicated, but still Donald Trump says that they're winding down their operations. Isn't this obfuscating? Isn't this confusing in nature as to what exactly the American strategy is and should be?
Vineet, I think, what he's trying to project is peace through strength, that, we've achieved our targets. We wanted to degrade Iran's missile capabilities. We wanted them to be completely defenseless. We wanted to eliminate their Navy and Air Force. And at the same time, we wanted to protect all of the allies. And we've achieved all of this, and now we're trying to wind down. So, that is basically him trying to project that sort of strength. But at the same time, it's confusing when you're sending thousands of Marines. I mean, I think 4,500 in total, or maybe close to 5,000 Marines with the combination of Tripoli and Boxer going into the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that in itself is mixed messaging. I mean, here you're saying that you're trying to wind down, but at the same time, you're asking the Congress for $200 billion worth of monies, which will hopefully, last for a year or so. And, it just doesn't make sense. So the objective, I think, what they're trying to do is, have an off-ramp in some shape and form, but at the same time, through the amphibious landings, ensure that they can somehow secure the Strait of Hormuz, either through, having access to the islands of Kashum and, they thereby escort tankers and have support strikes, and yet not go into a full ground invasion of mainland Iran. So I think that's how they want to calibrate this and ensure that, it's a protracted war, something similar to the Ukrainian kind of a scenario where, the main objectives of Russia has been achieved, and now you're just trying to grapple around to ensure that you can get more and more security and more installations and more sanctity from the Western nations. So I think that is what the United Nations, United States and Israel are trying to do. But Israel's objectives are quite different. Israel basically wants to cripple Iran completely, because for them, a prosperous Iran or a non-prosperous Iran is in no interest. So they want to completely obliterate Iran's capability in existence, and that is where I think there is a bit of disagreement between the United States and Israel. And we've seen it time and time again how Israeli foreign policy or their sort of intelligence services have some sort of control over American foreign policy as well. We've seen it in Iraq, we've seen it in Syria. So,
Okay, Adit, let me in fact, come back to you with key developments shaping in for the expanding war in West Asia. US President Donald Trump said that he was considering winding down military operations against Iran, as the United States has temporarily eased sanctions on Iranian oil shipments to stem a global supply crisis. In fact, Trump went on to say that he was getting very close to meeting their end objectives and was considering winding down. He also said that the onus of the protection of the strait lies on the nations that use that route, and he said the US does not use that route, so hence the responsibility is of the nations that do. Sumit, before we wind up, we don't have much time. It's important to understand that it seems that at this point in time, the United States is giving out a feeling or a sense that they have in some way achieved some sort of a victory. What would be the criteria of this victory, Sumit?
Vineet, if you look at it, there are 5 criteria of victory. I'm talking from a United States perspective. Some of them are achieved, some is not achieved. They have to eliminate Mustafa Khamenei and the 15 men which they have declared, which there's a 10 million pounder bounty. They have to do a regime change, right? They have to get rid of the nuclear radioactive uranium, which is 60% enriched in Natanz, which they have done, and Isfahan is what can going. They have to take control of the Karg Island, and thereby taking the control of the Iranian oil, and possibly find a way of controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Out of 8 major ports, they have bombarded 4 it is happening. Caspian Sea is happening. So out of 11 major ports of Iran, there are only 2 or 3 which are really working right now, and the regime is crippled. These are the 5 objectives, because Trump wants a decisive victory to go back and show if he controls the Iranian oil, he gets the money out of it. By paisa chahiye na. And Israelis, their objective is not achieved till the time Hamas, Hezbollah and all are neutralized. They are drastically keeping their focus on Hezbollah and people like them. They are taking them out. So it is a way what they've said first. No ballistic missiles, no uranium, no proxies, and the regime change. Without regime change, if Mustafa Khamenei is there and Ali Khamenei is not there, it doesn't mean anything. It's almost the same thing. So they have to ensure it's done. These are the 5 parameters as per American perspective. Unless and until they are done, they are not going to stop. We need. That's why they're asking for $200 billion and moving around 9,000 special forces men, hardly these marine commandos and the specialists to Strait of Hormuz for a mission and a purpose, not for anything else, which is over and above the 50,000 men they have already in Middle East, sir.
All right, we've run out of time. Appreciate everybody who joined in and weighed in on this ongoing conflict, which of course is a big concern now for the entire world. We take a short break. Be right back.